Well, the rankings made it very clear. Ole Miss has to win if they want to make the college football playoff. That's Steven Willis, Locked On Ole Miss, here to discuss. This is not a guaranteed win, Steven. Florida is a pretty darn good football team. Ole Miss is better. That's why they are favored. But on the road, I think this is one of the biggest games of the Lane Kiffin era.
Yeah, it's the biggest game in modern Ole Miss history because of what it means if you win it and everything looking going down the line. I think that Ole Miss is in good shape. They honestly, people that might remember this reminds me a lot of the way that Ole Miss finished the 2008 season. That was the year that at the end of the year, they just blew out LSU. They blew out Mississippi State, and then they blew out a number 3 ranked Texas Tech team in the Cotton Bowl. And that reminds me of this team. They kind of figured it out. They scuffled earlier in the season, and once it clicked in, it really clicked in. Now, Florida's a good team, but at the end of the day, DJ Lagway, if you're going to get him this year. He's gettable right now as a true freshman. DJ Lagway in 2026 is terrifying, but this year is the year to get him. And Ole Miss's offense has come along, and that defense is just nasty, stopping the run. I think this is a pretty good matchup for Ole Miss as a whole, but Florida is a good team and a lot better. The fan base of Florida, I hope you are enjoying this because you are not enjoying this young Florida team and their resurgence because you decided to do all of this crap in September and October to Billy Napier, and this is on you.
Well, okay, let me defend the Florida fans there. Let's not forget that Billy Napier had an entire offseason to get ready for 2024. It's his 3rd year in Gainesville, and Miami walked in there week 1 and kicked their rear ends out of the stadium like Magneto to Wolverine in X-Men Days of Future Past, and then Texas A&M waltzed in there and did the same thing 2 weeks later.
Yeah, those are pretty good teams. They're all ranked in the top 15.
They shouldn't have beaten them that badly, though.
But before this season, everybody thought that Florida was going to go 2-10 or 1-11. They looked at the schedule and they thought that Florida State members have actually drawn that future schedule up for this year. This was going to be a hard year. You had a young team with Billy Napier, and I just think that the young players that have been turning out for Florida and playing much better. I think Florida has only lost to top 15 teams at this point. That's the only teams that have beaten Florida this year. If you were to survive this, and they're going to end up in Birmingham or Memphis or one of those locations, but if you have a true freshman quarterback in DJ Lagway, a really good running back in Jaden Ball, and those guys, those bowl practices and all that matter. And Billy Napier getting that should be commended. It's not like he's gifted another year at Florida. He's actually, if he gets to 6 wins, which it looks like he's going to do, he has Florida State on the schedule.
Gosh, they're so bad.
Yeah, I think they should be commended.
I agree. I had them 5-7 before the year, and it looks like they're going to get to 6-6. And I thought 5-7 with that schedule was enough to save his job. 6-6 absolutely is. And Billy Napier's proven me wrong because I'm someone who said, wait a minute, it's not just that you lost in the first 3 weeks at home twice. It's that you got blown out. That's not good. But the progress and the buy-in in Gainesville is incredibly real throughout the course of this year. Beating LSU is not a small thing, and you know very well that Ole Miss is a capable football team, but Florida proved that they too can play with at least the top of tier 2 or bottom of tier 1 teams in the SEC. And yeah, they were more competitive than the score indicated against Georgia. They weren't competitive against Texas because they didn't have a quarterback there. I wonder how that game looks if DJ Lagway plays. I wonder how the Tennessee game looks if they don't have a quarterback injury there. Like, this is a Florida team that I think Ole Miss should be scared of. And I have said this many times on the show, Steven. I am not going to be switcheroo guy where if Ole Miss goes into Gainesville and wins by 20 points, I'm going to say, well, you were favored by 10. You should have got in there and win. Florida's not actually that good. Like, no, Florida's playing good football right now.
Florida is hard.
They're the best 5-5 team I have ever seen when they have Lagway in their quarterback rolling along. But I think Ole Miss can lose this game if they play the way they did against Kentucky.
Yes, but I do not think they're going to play the way they did against Kentucky. The switch has kind of been flipped, it seems like, to the Ole Miss team. Now, it's possible. Like I said, the only way that Kentucky or that Florida can win this game is if Ole Miss plays down to the level to where they can get them. If Ole Miss plays its best, Florida doesn't have a chance to win the game. The offense and the defense, they're just too good. Florida's a little bit too young. But if Ole Miss turns the ball over, if Ole Miss has some silly drive saving penalties like they did against Kentucky, if they go for it on 4th down in the swamp in minus territory and do not make it to where Florida has a nice short field for a touchdown against that defense, you could have a lot of trouble. Florida is talented enough to beat you. They had like 15 players, I think, preseason that were Senior Bowl watch list level players. This is a talented football team. They're a young quarterback. They have a young running back, some young skillful players, but this is a decent football team. But at the end of the day, I think the spread is about right.
Yeah, it's Florida minus 10.5 according to our friends at FanDuel. They're America's
Plus
number one
10.5.
sportsbook. I'm just saying they're America's number one sportsbook for people who might not have known. But I think for Ole Miss in this spot, when I think about how they played it the first half of the year, very similar to Florida. I think they're playing much better in the second half. How good does that win against South Carolina look right about now?
Oh, yeah,
South Carolina, who has played their way deservedly into the top 25, that was this close to beating LSU. You know how close South Carolina is to being a college football playoff contender right now? They're this close.
A push on a quarterback away from being the college football playoff.
But Lenore Sellers is clearly the guy.
Oh yeah,
I think he's clearly the guy. But you can make the case that a blown call by the officials is the difference between South Carolina being where they're at and South Carolina being in the mix to be the 7th, potentially 10-2 SEC team at the end of the year. Talked about that on yesterday's rankings reaction show with Brian Smith of Locked On Seminoles and our Locked On Recruiting Insider here at the network. Like, I mean, it's just bonkers. It is bonkers how close South Carolina is. That's a darn good football team. But so when I look at Ole Miss and Florida, like, yes, it can be a competitive game, but I've also seen Ole Miss in the second half of the season, Steven, play really well on both sides of the ball. I look at the Arkansas game, and I don't poo-poo that either, because I think Arkansas, they're not great, but they're solid. And for Ole Miss to go in there and drop a 60 piece, yeah, I think the offense is gelling a lot more throughout the second half of the year than it did in the first.
I think it's bad. I think Florida, if I'm not mistaken, they're kind of young on the back end of the defense, and that's problematic playing against Jackson Dart and this Ole Miss passing attack. There's a good chance that Trey Harris is going to be back in this football game, which means that Ole Miss is going to bring back the number one wide receiver in all of college football. And the running backs, interesting. I think that Ole Miss needs to run the ball just enough to be a threat running the ball. If Ole Miss can do that, they're going to put up 30, 35 points in this game. And then the question becomes, can Florida score 30 to 35 points? And I think they're going to score. I think they're going to make plays. I think Billy Napier, whenever he's rolling, he can be a good schemer with what he's doing. It does a lot of motions and things like that. But in this game, I don't know if anybody can score 30 points on Ole Miss's defense. So if Ole Miss can score over 30 against Florida, they have a good chance to win the game. That's the reason I think Florida wants this game to be a rock fight.
By the way, for those listening or watching out there, I heard Steven declare Trey Harris is the best wide receiver in college football. I'm not going to comment. I just want you to know that I heard it, and I don't feel like debating it right now because there are bigger things to discuss. He's up there. He's up there. I'm just gonna.
He's number one in receiving right now and hadn't played in
I'm just gonna leave it there. We're just gonna leave that discussion be. We're not touching that. That is, what's something you don't want to touch? Hot lava, hot coals. That's a pan in the oven. Okay, don't touch without an oven mitt. I don't have my oven mitts on me, so we're not gonna do that right now.